Deriving the features of cancelling. Cancelling, disgust, authoritarianism and social mimicry, and how they are related, by Dr. Geert Andringa. Cancelling and disgust are really closely related. Let's look at a definition of cancelling. Cancelling is to publicly boycott or withdraw support from a person, an organization, etc. for promoting beliefs that are regarded as socially unacceptable. So this is a general standard definition of cancelling. So let's see how we define disgust. Disgust is a self-protective reaction to distance yourself from something perceived as toxic. So let's rearrange this a bit. To publicly boycott or withdraw support from someone, that is a self-protective reaction to distance yourself from something. Suppose now that promoting beliefs that are regarded as socially unacceptable is seen as something that is toxic. Then we can combine the two. And actually that leads to cancelling as protecting the in-group from toxic beliefs. Protecting the in-group from toxic beliefs entails an intolerance to opinion diversity. Intolerance to opinion diversity is part of Stanner's authoritarian dynamic. He says that intolerance to opinion diversity scales with authoritarianism times the normative threat level. So let's see what this actually means. Authoritarianism, according to Stanner, is heavily determined by cognitive incapacity to deal with complexity and difference. This entails that authoritarians, they need social simplicity and uniformity. But suppose that is not fulfilled. If that is not fulfilled, we get a so-called normative threat. And what are normative threats? For example, untrusted authorities, criticized authorities, alternative, attractive and better ideas than the in-group typically has, and a lack of consensus. Authoritarianism is determined by cognitive incapacity. That means that in order to choose your behavior, you only engage in socially acceptable behaviors. And that entails that whatever you do, it is always social mimicry, because you're looking for what is socially accepted and therefore it has already been implemented by other people. So let's look at social mimicry. Social mimicry is only possible with a high level of oneness and a high level of sameness. And oneness is necessary in order to know who to mimic, and sameness is necessary to know what to mimic. A normative threat reduces the oneness and sameness of an environment and therefore makes it more difficult to use social mimicry. On the other hand, intolerance to opinion diversity promotes oneness and sameness and makes it easier to mimic. This also leads to a definition of the in-group. So what is an in-group? An in-group is a group of individuals who share and protect a system of oneness and sameness that permits social mimicry as basic cognitive strategy. And this group, in order to protect itself, cancels ideas, people who promote those ideas, and they do that to bring social complexity down to the level that the in-group can deal with. So that is the core of cancelling. Cancelling promotes oneness and sameness. A normative threat, on the other hand, reduces oneness and sameness. Why does it reduce that? Because it adds realism and insight in general, and it works via independent thought, so the opposite of social mimicry, on self-decided sensible actions, with innovation, and with something that I call pervasive optimization, the optimization of everything in the context of everything else. So let's see what happens if there is a strong normative threat, so when these things are important. Then the members of the in-group feel inadequate. And they feel inadequate because they have a cognitive incapacity to deal with complexity and difference. That is the result of criticized authority, untrusted authorities, lack of consensus, alternative, attractive and better ideas. So if these are important, then social mimicry is ineffective. And therefore you don't know who to mimic anymore or what to mimic. And if social mimicry is your only strategy, you really have a problem with selecting what to do. And even worse, you have an existential panic You simply do not know how to act as an agent anymore. And that leads to a very strong urge to restore in-group adequacy. So the in-group becomes center stage here. It starts restoring oneness by ensuring that authorities are no longer criticized or more trusted. And they restore sameness by ensuring that the consensus becomes bigger and that alternative, better or complex ideas are reduced in importance. And that makes it, again, possible to know who to mimic and what to mimic, and hence social mimicry is a viable strategy again. So let's see how this process of restoring in-group adequacy actually works. It works via the in-group disgust reaction. What is an in-group disgust reaction? That is a strong, urgent, self-protective reaction to purge the in-group from an effect felt to be toxic. And the result of it is protecting the in-group from toxic beliefs. Let's see how we can parse this definition of in-group level disgust. Strong entails that it is a dominant action for the in-group. Urgent means that there is no corrective metacognition. People do not stop and think about what are we doing now. It is self-protective, and it means that the target is not protected. It is a reaction in response to in-group inadequacy, like I said in the previous sheet. To purge means to disconnect the target from the in-group. The in-group does it by relying on in-group sameness. It is from an effect, and an effect is an unspecified negative influence that is felt to be, because it's felt, it is a subrational drive, toxic. And because it is toxic, it's harmful, malign, and potentially deadly. Let's see what we can conclude from this. From the fact that it is a dominant action with no corrective metacognition, the target is not protected, and it is a subrational drive, it basically entails that the outcomes are fixed from the start. It is also superficial cognition because it is a dominant action with no corrective metacognition, so there is no deeper thought. It relies on in-group sameness, and it is a subrational drive. It is also based on shared knowledge, rules, procedures, norms, ideologies, etc., because there is no corrective metacognition. It is in response to in-group adequacy, relies on in-group sameness, and it is an unspecified negative influence, so we have to do something about it. It's a problem that has to be solved with shared knowledge. It's harmful, malign, and potentially deadly, and it is a really big problem. And the last one is the interaction with the target is minimized. The target is not to be protected. It has to be disconnected from the in-group. It is an unspecified negative influence that you have to protect yourself from, and it's harmful, malign, and potentially deadly. The whole effect is that the disgust reaction leads to minimized interaction with the in-group. Overall, this is a deep, unconscious, visceral, and self-protective motivation by the in-group. And in practice, it leads to a disgusting strawman narrative about the target that destroys the in-group reputation of the target. So the target becomes a toxic individual. It is even so that the target's actual arguments are toxic, and hence they cannot be shared by the in-group, because if they would be shared, it would entail sharing toxic ideas and hence complicating the environment. That is an impossibility. That will never happen. Let's then look at the features of cancelling. The outcomes are fixed from the start, and there are actually two options. Either we, the in-group, reimpose our sameness on you, or we purge you from the in-group, disregarding all you have contributed. So let's see. Option 1 means you recant by humiliating yourself through denouncing both your diversity and your individuality. After you re-established your in-group worthiness, you are re-accepted, but only at the bottom. Option 2, then you are purged and potentially hurt or worse, but in-group sameness is restored. You are valueless, hence no harm is done, and your views do not poison the in-group. So that is kind of the good thing from the perspective of the in-group of purging target. So what also happens is that no member of the in-group can or will make an effort to understand your point of view and represent it fairly. because that would mean sharing the toxic ideas. And that is also not possible because there is superficial cognition, interaction is minimized, and it's only about the shared knowledge, and your knowledge is not shared. Instead, we harness our rules and procedures, as an anonymous bureaucracy typically, to suppress your ability to poison the in-group. So that is the whole goal of the cancelling procedure. What does it lead to? It leads to shared in-group disgust, and that's the cancelling reaction. And you only know you're cancelled after the in-group decided that you are no longer part of the in-group. So typically, you notice it after the fact. From that moment on, you are disgusting, your argument don't count, and there is no defense possible. Either you accept everything of the in-group and return at the bottom, or you are purged. Anyway, your arguments are not going to be taken seriously. The only expertise that is used to judge you is in-group expertise. And accusations by in-groups are always true. You can't defend against them. You are attacked. What is attacked? That is typically a caricature of you focusing on your weaknesses and a straw man narrative of your opinions. And the straw men are typically attacked, and never the true opinions. That is really characteristic. Your objections only make it worse, and contact with you contaminates the in-group. These are the general features, and they do not involve any higher cognition. And this all connects to totalitarianism. The origin of totalitarianism is a deep, unconscious, visceral and self-protective process to prevent the world from spinning out of control. Why does it seem that the world spins out of control? That is because of the cognitive incapacity to deal with complexity and difference that the in-group actually has. The in-group is a group of individuals who share and protect a system of oneness and sameness that permits social mimicry as basic cognitive strategy. And the goal of totalitarianism is to bring social complexity down to the level that authoritarians can deal with. And that is the basis of intolerance to opinion diversity. And cancelling is the means of that. So, more information you can find at www.corecognition.com.